The world watched as Bashar al-Assad's brutal reign finally ended in December 2024, closing a chapter of unimaginable suffering for Syria. After years of civil war and devastation, a transitional government led by Ahmad al-Sharaa stepped into a fractured nation desperate for unity and hope. The challenges were immense, disarming militias, rebuilding cities, and forging a new political system from the ruins. The international community, once divided, now cautiously supported Syria's fragile new beginning. Early 2025 brought cautious optimism as al-Sharaa's government reached out to former adversaries and promised a voice for all Syrians. Yet, the threat of armed groups like ISIS lingered, casting a shadow over the country's fragile peace. Syria's survival now depended on confronting these dangers while building a foundation for lasting stability. The fight against ISIS forged an unlikely alliance, U.S. and Syrian forces working side by side. With Assad gone, President al-Sharaa joined the international coalition, opening the door to direct cooperation with American troops. Joint operations became routine, with U.S. forces providing training and intelligence, while Syrians contributed local knowledge and manpower. This partnership brought new capabilities but also new risks, as extremists targeted those seen as collaborating with the West. President al-Sharaa's historic visit to the White House in late 2025 symbolized this new alliance. Together they aimed to prevent ISIS from regrouping and exploiting Syria's instability. The alliance was pragmatic, born of necessity, and became a cornerstone in the fight for Syria's future. But the partnership remained fragile, tested daily by the dangers on the ground. On December 13, 2025, tragedy struck in Palmyra, shattering the fragile peace that had only just begun to settle over this ancient city. The echoes of conflict, never far from the surface, returned with a sudden violent force. During a joint U.S.-Syrian counterterrorism operation, a gunman opened fire at a military post, catching everyone off guard. In a matter of moments, 2 American soldiers and a civilian interpreter lost their lives, their mission cut short by a hail of bullets. The attack was swift, brutal, and left the outpost reeling in shock. Amid the chaos, medics rushed to save the wounded. 3 more Americans and 2 Syrians were injured, their fates uncertain as they were evacuated under the watchful eyes of their comrades. The attacker was ultimately killed by Syrian forces, but the damage had already been done. Initial reports quickly pointed to ISIS, the ever-present threat in the region. But as investigators combed through the evidence, a more disturbing truth emerged. The gunman was not an outsider, but a member of the Syrian security forces. This revelation sent a chill through the ranks, raising the specter of an insider attack and igniting fears of betrayal from within. The incident sent shockwaves through both nations, threatening to undermine the hard-won trust between partners. American and Syrian soldiers, who had stood shoulder to shoulder against a common enemy, now looked at each other with suspicion and uncertainty. The fragile alliance, built on months of cooperation, suddenly seemed at risk of unraveling. It was a calculated assault, designed not just to inflict casualties, but to sow distrust and fear. The attack was a grim reminder that ISIS's ideology still lurked within Syria's ranks, waiting for any opportunity to strike from the shadows. Even as the sun rose over Palmyra's ruins, the darkness of suspicion lingered. The attack was not just a military loss, it was a political statement, exposing the deep vulnerabilities of the new alliance. It revealed how fragile peace truly is, and how easily it can be shattered by a single act of violence. The soldiers left behind grappled with grief, anger, and the daunting reality that their mission had become even more dangerous. U.S. officials launched an urgent investigation, determined to uncover the truth behind the attack. Every detail was scrutinized, every motive questioned, as leaders on both sides demanded answers. The search for justice became a race against time, with the stability of the region hanging in the balance. The Palmyra tragedy became a stark reminder that in Syria, the enemy could be hiding in plain sight. Trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild, and every soldier now faced the uneasy reality that danger could come from anywhere, even from those who wore the same uniform. The cost of peace was once again measured in blood, echoing through the silent ruins of Palmyra, and reminding the world that the path to stability is fraught with sacrifice and uncertainty. In the immediate aftermath of the attack, U.S. and Syrian forces sprang into action, demonstrating remarkable coordination under pressure. Their swift response was a testament to months of joint training and the trust built between the two militaries, even in the face of uncertainty and chaos. American helicopters, guided by both U.S. and Syrian ground teams, evacuated the wounded with urgency to the al-Tanf base. There, advanced medical teams were already preparing to receive casualties, working through the night to stabilize and treat the injured. Every second counted, and the seamless cooperation saved lives. Meanwhile, Syrian forces moved quickly to secure the blast site, establishing a tight perimeter. Together with U.S. Central Command, they launched a comprehensive investigation, determined to uncover the truth behind the attack, its motives, its origins, and whether it signaled a larger threat. Was this the work of a lone wolf, a sleeper agent hiding in plain sight, or the first sign of a coordinated ISIS plot? Intelligence officers pored over evidence, piecing together fragments of information in the hopes of preventing future tragedies. The answers to these questions were critical, not only for delivering justice to the victims, but also for the future of the fragile partnership between the U.S. and Syrian forces. Trust, once shaken, would be difficult to rebuild. The Pentagon soon confirmed the loss of a vital interpreter, a bridge between cultures and a key to communication on the ground. His sacrifice underscored the immense risks faced by those who worked to unite people from different worlds, often at great personal cost. In response, both sides began a thorough review of their security protocols, reinforcing checkpoints and scrutinizing every detail. The attack forced leaders to confront hard questions about trust, vulnerability, and the ever-present dangers of their mission. It was a sobering moment for everyone involved, a stark reminder of the dangers inherent in trying to stabilize a war-torn nation. The cost of peace, they realized, could be heartbreakingly high. The risks of the mission were no longer abstract, they were real, immediate, and deeply personal. For the soldiers and their allies, the stakes had never been higher. How they responded in these critical hours would not only determine the outcome of the investigation, but would also shape the future of the alliance and the hope for lasting stability in the region. News of the Palmyra attack hit Washington like a thunderclap, sending shockwaves through the halls of power and igniting a wave of grief and outrage across the nation. The city, already tense from months of uncertainty, was suddenly united in mourning and anger. Flags flew at half-mast, and somber crowds gathered outside the White House and Capitol, searching for answers and reassurance. President Trump wasted no time in addressing the nation. He called the attack an act of terror by ISIS, vowing very serious retaliation. His words were forceful and direct, promising that those responsible would pay a heavy price for their actions. The president's tone left no doubt. America would not stand idly by in the face of such brutality. Trump acknowledged the dangers that American forces faced in Syria, but he reaffirmed the necessity of a continued U.S. presence in the region. He spoke of the sacrifices made by American service members and the importance of standing by allies in the fight against extremism. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth echoed the president's resolve, issuing a chilling warning to the world. Anyone who targeted Americans would be relentlessly hunted down, no matter where they tried to hide. The message was clear: there would be no safe haven for those who dared to strike at the United States. This was more than just rhetoric. It was a declaration of intent, a signal to both allies and adversaries that the U.S. was prepared to act decisively. The administration's words were meant to deter future attacks and reassure the American people that their leaders would not waver in the face of terror. The administration's unified response underscored the gravity of the loss. Across Washington, leaders from both parties stood together, emphasizing that the sacrifice of American lives would not be forgotten. Candlelight vigils and moments of silence were held as the nation grieved and steeled itself for what might come next. The vow of retaliation set the stage for potential military action. Fighter jets roared to life on distant airbases, and military convoys prepared for deployment, signaling that the U.S. was ready to respond with force if necessary. The U.S. made it clear its mission in Syria would continue, undeterred by terror. The partnership with the new Syrian government was reaffirmed, with joint patrols and cooperation signaling a commitment to stability and peace in the region. The stakes had never been higher, and neither had America's resolve. In the face of tragedy, the nation stood united, determined to honor the fallen and confront the threat head-on. For Syria's new government, the Palmyra attack was a devastating blow. President al-Bashar and his administration condemned the assault, expressing sorrow and solidarity with the U.S. The attack exposed vulnerabilities in Syria's rebuilding security forces, raising fears of infiltration by extremists. The government moved quickly to cooperate with the U.S. investigation, knowing its credibility was on the line. For Syrians, the attack was a painful reminder that peace remained elusive. The shared loss deepened the bond between the two nations, united in grief and determination. Syria's leaders pledged to honor the fallen by redoubling efforts to secure their country. ISIS may have lost its territory, but its threat endures. The group has transformed into a shadowy insurgency, operating through sleeper cells and terror attacks like Palmyra. Thousands of fighters remain active across Syria and Iraq, exploiting ungoverned spaces and spreading extremist propaganda. Their strategy is to create fear, undermine the new government, and drive a wedge between Syria and its allies. Insider attacks are designed to shatter trust and destabilize fragile partnerships. The fight against ISIS is not just military, it requires addressing poverty, grievances, and the root causes of extremism. As long as these issues persist, ISIS will find ways to regenerate. The shadow of ISIS is long, demanding constant vigilance and a comprehensive approach. The Palmyra attack underscored the monumental challenges facing Syria's transitional government. Disarming militias, building a unified army, and reconstructing devastated cities are daunting tasks. Economic recovery depends on security and international investment, both in short supply. Politically, the government must reconcile divided communities and pave the way for elections and a new constitution. Healing deep societal wounds is a generational project, easily derailed by violence or mistrust. The attack was a stress test, forcing the government to confront its weaknesses and prove its reliability to the world. How Syria responds will shape its future and its place in the global community. Palmyra's tragedy brought Syria and the U.S. to a crossroads. For America, the loss forced a reckoning over its mission's risks and goals. For Syria, it was a test of leadership and partnership, demanding transparency and reform. Both nations must act decisively to root out extremism and rebuild trust. Despite the pain, the unity forged in tragedy could strengthen their alliance. The shared goal of defeating ISIS and stabilizing Syria remains the foundation for cooperation. The sacrifices made must inspire renewed determination. The journey ahead is perilous, but abandoning it now would risk plunging Syria back into chaos.